And so if you can start out by being consumer centric and ask yourself those key questions of why someone is doing that, and then go into the data to help you paint that picture, you'll get a better understanding of the consumer and you won't get bogged down by the data in that way. So ask yourself first, do you know the consumer's why? And the why broken into three pieces, which is social, functional, and emotional behind the problem that they're trying to solve so that you can develop a solution that meets their problem.
Welcome to the Marketing Report, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Report.
Welcome to the Marketing Report podcast. I'm Tim Finnigan, and I head up product marketing at Verisk Marketing Solutions, and we're basically a consumer insights and identity provider. So what the theme about today is, I just want to give you a little context. I was recently at a Brand Innovators Marketing Innovation Summit and led a session called Leveraging Data to Unlock Insights to Forge Authenticity. And authenticity is the word of the day. But the point of this whole conversation is that consumers have infinite choices and they just don't want to see a product. They want to see themselves in the product and they want to trust the brand behind it. And that's where authenticity becomes extremely important. But authenticity isn't just about intuition or storytelling. It's also about understanding the consumer. And this understanding is amplified when we leverage data. And data allows us to listen more deeply, respond more effectively, and connect more genuinely. And the outcome, sort of the benefit of this, are brands that are authentic, enjoy higher engagement, greater trust, and ultimately long-term success. But all this sounds a little easier said than done. And that's why I'm pleased to have Paolo Narag from Procter Gamble join me on the podcast today. And we are actually on stage together in Boston for the Brand Innovators Marketing Summit. Welcome to the podcast, Paolo.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me. Like you said, a few weeks ago when you and I were on stage, I had a ton of fun. I love the topic of authenticity, and it plays such a key role in what I do at Procter Gamble, and specifically as the Gillette brand director. So very excited to be part of this podcast and happy to share some of my experiences and some of the things that I do with Gillette.
So you mentioned Gillette, you mentioned
Mhm.
Procter and Gamble and authenticity. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're most responsible for.
Yeah, and they're definitely. So like I said, I'm one of our global brand directors on Gillette. And so I have responsibilities for strategy, product, and commercial innovation globally for some of the most iconic brands. And truly, it's a privilege to have these as part of what my team does. So I have brands such as Mach 3, Fusion 5, ProGlide, and then two of our newest brands, which is Skin Guard for sensitive skin. And then my all-time favorite right now, Kinksy Gillette, which is our beard care brand. And I know those that are listening to the podcast audio wise can't see my face, but I am clean shaven, very much smooth like a dolphin. So I channel a lot of the energy and envy of having a beard into helping guys have the best look and feel for their beards globally. So it's been truly a ride. And if you think about Procter and Gamble brand management to help size where I fit into that puzzle, there's probably two big silos. One is the more traditional marketing of it, where you're running campaigns, you're doing ad creative, you're working with retailers to do the go-to-market strategy and retail marketing. But where I sit is on the other side of that pillar and I think it's really ties to the topic today, which is authenticity, of really deep consumer insights and research. So I'm spending most of my time talking to consumers, running consumer surveys, observing them in shopping behavior and in where they're doing their grooming, which is in the bathroom, and then taking those experiences and bringing those to insights that then inform strategic choices and non-choices part of Gillette globally, and then also product innovation and commercial innovation. So In my 3 years on the job, I've had tremendous opportunity to do research with guys with beards in Italy, in the UK, to do guys that are clean shaven in Japan, smooth like dolphin, like I am. So it's been incredible. And I think one of the things that I picked up, and I'll talk more on today, is that there is so much data out there, Tim. And one thing we got to watch out for is not to get bogged down by the data and make sure that we still have the core heart of a marketer, which is the human connection, to get the qualitative piece at the same time, to marry that to get to authenticity.
So Paolo, so you said a couple things that are really interesting. How do you not get bogged down in data? Because I know some of your background hasn't always been in, CPG or, brands. It's actually, investor financial stuff.
Yeah.
And you love data. So how do you not get bogged down in data and balance that data and ingenuity together to create sort of this brand promise?
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I used to be an investment banker. So I love the data. I love data. I love numbers, love models. And I think there's a place and time to leverage that to complement what you're doing. But where I think the heart of authenticity is in the qualitative human experience. And I think to not let yourself get bogged down, you have to start there and ask yourself, okay, do I know the consumer enough to know not just the what of what they're doing and the how of how they're doing it? So he's shaving, how he's shaving, but why is he doing it that way? Because if you go into, for example, the bathroom and see how a guy is shaving their beard or shaving their face, you'll notice things that they won't even be able to tell you why they're doing it. And so if you can start out by being consumer centric and ask yourself those key questions of why someone is doing that, and then go into the data to help you paint that picture, you'll get a better understanding of the consumer, and you won't get bogged down by the data in that way. So ask yourself first, do you know the consumer's why? And the why broken into three pieces, which is social, functional, and emotional, behind the problem that they're trying to solve, so that you can develop a solution that meets their problem.
So Paul, let's stay there for a second, because I think a lot of maybe newer marketers, or in the age that we're in with technology, it's like, oh, P&G will probably just we can find this online, or we'll do some type of model to figure out. But you had sort of briefly touched on how you can get closer to the consumer, and it's through these innovative, more like one-to-one. Can you just talk a little bit more about how you get closer to the consumer?
Yeah, no, definitely. So there's probably three things that I can share how we get closer to the consumer. One is when we're designing products, we're now looking at it from shelf backed. So before we would start with product design with R&D and then build from there, taking in consumer insights and then developing it that way. Now what we're doing is, how do we build products starting at the shelf? Because 80% in our category, 80% of the decisions are at shelf. So how can we put our product design starting in the real world context? And so that's one of the things that we're doing now, which is putting pack designs in the context of a real shelf versus a virtual shelf. When we do consumer interviews now, instead of just doing one-on-one interviews with consumers sitting down at a table, now we're going into the bathroom and we're asking them questions on, how come you have two trimmers here? Where do you usually do your grooming? And really understanding how he's going about his day to day in the context of where he's doing it. And then the third one is using AI to help us understand the consumer better by taking online sentiment, online ratings and reviews, internal data, and then modeling those consumers so that we can have real-time answers, the different ideas that we have, so that we can create, iterate, accelerate what we do from a product development standpoint.
So when you mention AI, and that AI always comes up on this podcast about, when I ask someone, hey, what do you need to look for the future? But for you, like, is it AI versus being authentic, or how do you bring those two together to make sure you're being authentic and not taking shortcuts with AI?
Yeah. So in my mind, and this is my perspective, I think AI is an incredible tool, but it is just a tool. And the reason that it is because AI is based off of past data. It's based off of past human experience. And in my mind, humans, for as long as as long as we can remember, have continued to evolve. And as long as we continue to evolve, there's always going to be new data. And I truly believe that the only people that can understand people to help guide AI as a tool are other marketers, other creatives, other human beings. And so AI, we've used it a lot in P&G, like I mentioned, to model consumer behavior, get real-time reaction to different ideas. We've used it to iterate on different marketing assets. But at the end of the day, it's a tool for marketers to create, iterate, accelerate what we do. And it, in my mind, will always be a tool as long as humanity and human experience is at the core of what marketers do. And when it comes to authenticity, people are looking for you as a brand to not only understand what you stand for, what you're serving, and how you serve it, but they're also looking for those brands to truly understand, again, the social, emotional, and functional pieces of what they're trying to do day in and day out. And you still need a human being to do that with another human being. And so that's why I love AI. I use it every single day beyond my work. But again, I think it is a tool rather than a replacement for a marketer in the future.
Yeah, that's the great point, Paolo, because as I think of it, is AI is a piece, survey is a piece, checking out your competitors is a piece, checking out, your own SWOT analysis or your own, and then you can create a better story with bringing all the pieces in together than just relying on one. So you had mentioned about, you had talked about the timeliness of Gillette. I mean, they're over 100-year brand. How do you keep that brand fresh and authentic for so long? Like, I would think it would be stressful for you as a brand owner. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to end this iconic brand. So so the first question is like, how do you do that, and what do you worry about?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two things that help us remain authentic and help us still resonate with consumers. And maybe I can give a couple examples of that. So the first idea is that I believe that authenticity is magnified when your insights and actions align to the brand benefit. And I think a great example of that is Dawn, when they had the Save the Wildlife campaign. We all remember the images of these really cute yellow ducklings covered in gray mute mud. And the root of where that insight and where that idea came from is Dawn had observed the wildlife rescuers using the Dawn Blue as a tough grease cutting formula to not just cut the grease off with these ducks, but also because it was gentle on the animals themselves. And so that was a insight that was not rooted in quantitative data. It was rooted in qualitative data and really rooted in human experience and observing that experience. And so I think what made that campaign really strong, and I think it's what Gillette is doing, and I'll talk a little bit more toward the end of my response here, but it's Dawn Blue's brand benefit of tough grease cutting formula paired perfectly with the Save the Wildlife campaign. So it became an extension of the brand that felt natural, it felt credible, and became a point of difference for the brand in the long run. Now, contrast that with in 2019 when Gillette had done the Toxic Masculinity campaign and had released a 2-minute video with a really good intent to really start a social conversation about how men can be better in everyday life. But it came about talking about toxic masculinity, bullying, mansplaining, sexual harassment. And I think there were two things there that we did not really hit the mark on. And it ties back to the Dawn example, which is one, in that 2-minute campaign video, we did not anchor on the brand benefit of Gillette. I think it's incredibly important as you want to be authentic to consumers that you also talk and you express the brand benefit and tie that inherently to what you're communicating. And then the second piece is, do you know your brand? Do you know the brand identity? Do you know your brand character? If your brand was a human, how would they speak on this topic? And in that campaign video, Tim, we came across more so as reprimanding versus being an empowerment to men, because the brand character of Gillette, and I'm going to just summarize it at high level, is the champion of men so that they can be empowered to be the best that they can be every day. But that video did not have that tone and voice. And so when consumers saw that, it was incongruent to what they have known about Gillette. And so there's an idea here, Tim, that I'd love to share, which is consumers forgive boldness when it comes across as authentic, but when it doesn't, they don't forget it. And so it's important for us to remain bold, but it's important for us to stay true to the brand identity and authentic to our brand benefit. So I think a couple of ways that Gillette is now doing this much better than they did in the past is we integrate the brand benefit of grooming as part of the identity of who a guy is. And so in a lot of the copy that you see, you'll always see us emphasizing and putting in there the act of grooming, because at the end of the day, that is what Gillette does. And at the end of the day, that is inherent to guy's identity. The second piece of it is that we are adding human experience and moments into our copy and advertising. So in a lot of the advertising campaigns that are running now, you'll see fathers teaching sons how to shave, but now we've even flipped the script of sons teaching fathers how to shave, because that is what's going on as beards become more popular, new technology and products come out into the marketplace. The other one too is the idea of the barbershop as an integral piece of culture and an integral piece of beards as well. So you'll see that incorporated into a lot of our TV copy, and it's all about bringing that human experience and, again, the social, emotional, and functional pieces of how he's grooming into what he sees, into our advertising across multiple different touch points.
And Paolo, you're so right, and you hit it with human experience and who that human is, because ultimately they're easier to market to if you know who they are. Like in my line of work, it's like demographic data. Oh, so I know where they live and I know how old they are, but that still doesn't even tell even a piece of the story, because it's the behavioral piece of it. And that's when we work more with B2B, and you're obviously B2C, is our customers still need to know who their consumers are. So it's really, I really am connected with that behavioral data that you're talking about. So let's switch. And for when people watch us on YouTube, you'll notice the Christmas tree and Paolo's back in the background. And this is perfect timing for my next question, is that as you look back towards 2024 and what you and your team want to accomplish for 2025, let's talk more broadly about what marketers should be aware of for 2025 to help them reach their goals.
Yeah. So I think there's three things that I'd love to highlight and to watch out for. And I'm seeing it now, but I think it's only going to get even louder, which is one, hyper authenticity. I think brands are becoming more aware, especially in a more saturated markets where entering a category, the barriers of entry are much lower than they used to be. There's going to be a need to be authentic, and it's not just going to be a point of difference. It's going to be a requirement for brands. And so you're going to see that come to life in campaigns now featuring more human moments and human experiences. You're going to see that in brands now moving from broad traditional linear television. I think there's still a place to do it, but I think they're going to put more time into how can you create dialogue and conversations online with small campfire niche groups. I think the second one that you're going to see is AI personalization. I think you have a couple examples already where brands like Coca-Cola and Wendy's are using AI now, but how can you use AI to create, iterate, and accelerate how you converse and how you connect with different groups in a much bigger scale? I think you're going to see a lot of brands using that. P&G, I think the last 2 years has hyper accelerated the use of AI, and in the point that I don't think that there's any project that I haven't touched that has AI incorporated into some part of it. And then I think the third one is watch out for storytelling. I think there's going to be brands that are going to be leveraging more of the long form 30-second, 60-second spots to start telling more stories rather than just blasting the 15-second advertising that's just trying to maximize reach. I think it goes back to the fact that, again, there's a lot of brands out there trying to reach consumers and talk to them. The ones that are going to be able to create authentic connection to their consumers, understand their brand identity, and do it consistently are going to be the ones that stand out. And so I think in 2025, that's probably what you're going to see.
I think storytelling is going to be my word for 2025,
Yeah.
just because, and even from like when sellers are trying to sell their wares to whoever it is, you still have to tell a story. Like, what's the benefit? What's the use case? How do I solve a challenge? And it's the same thing for a consumer. And you're right. I hope it goes from 15-second to more longer form, because I think you can get that loyalty. You can connect with that consumer when you have that. So my last question, this has gone by so fast. Tell me a little bit about what inspires you. for you and your team, and even for Gillette and Procter and Gamble?
Yeah. So I think what inspires me is I am seeing more of my team and more of P&G and marketers in general. So I had the chance to go to Cannes in the summer. And I think the human experience and humanity is coming back to marketing. I think there was a time that, we focused a lot on the functional pieces of products, especially in the consumer packaged goods industry. And now we're realizing that you need all three aspects of functional, social, and emotional to really speak and be authentic to consumers. And the marketer in the boardroom and the project teams is the key person to bring the human experience. And to your point, Tim, on the big word that I think will come up in 25 is storytelling. Marketers are storytellers. I think more marketers are realizing that is a core competency that we need to bring back, because it's not just going to be data to get to insights that are going to help us really stand out from the marketplace. I think one great metaphor and example that I like to think about data and qualitative data on is dancing. I think I had mentioned this in the talk. So my partner loves to dance, and I am not the best dancer. I'm learning to dance. I can tell you right now, I'm a much better marketer than I am dancer. But for us to get to authentic actions and insights, you need the data, which in my mind is the rhythm, the beat, the footsteps, but you also need the qualitative pieces, which is the emotional feel, the connection to consumers, the sound of the music in your body. It's the combination of both quantitative and qualitative human experience that creates the magic that is authenticity. And Tim, I'm excited because I'm seeing more marketers realize that is not just important, but it is critical for us to really enable our businesses and brands to stand out and to connect to our consumers in the future.
So, Paolo, I didn't tell you this on stage, but the worm is my one and only dance move. So when next time we're together, all you have to do is say, Tim, the worm, and I'm there for it.
Perfect. Well, mine's the SpongeBob, so you and I could both be on the dance floor doing our signature moves, Tim. Next time we're at one of those events.
We each have one move.
Yeah.
Paolo, this has been great. I think some things and some themes that I've tied on to is not only storytelling, but the idea of authenticity builds loyalty. And that key word that you just said, or key phrase, is that, the consumer, the consumer customer experience. And as marketers, if we can better sort of understand who that consumer is, you're going to be able to market to them more, and you can keep them longer term because you know what their likes, what they want, what they don't want. So, Paolo, this has been great. Let's do this again, and maybe mid-year, and we'll see how Gillette's doing with all your brand innovation.
Yes, 100%. Happy to come back anytime, Tim. This is a real privilege for me, so thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Report. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Report wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the show notes for more information.